Well, as Don mentioned there, these leaks have exposed the thinking of top Middle East leaders when it comes to dealing with Iran's nuclear program. The previously secret urgings are now out in the open for everyone to read. But what lasting impact will this have on the region? Our Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, has been taking a closer look.
Summits produce plenty of smiles, but as Qatar's Prime Minister said in one of the leaked documents, we lie to the Iranians and they lie to us. It was already known that the Gulf Arabs were deeply worried about Iran's nuclear ambitions, not believing Iran when it denied building a bomb. But after WikiLeaks, it's now clear that some were pushing the US to go to war against the Iranians. Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah is quoted urging the Americans to cut off the head of the snake. It isn't just the belief that Iran is building a nuclear weapon that's worrying Gulf Arab leaders, the King of Saudi Arabia, the Egyptians and the Jordanians as well. They're also uncomfortably aware that many of their own people admire the way that Iran and its allies preach and practice what they call resistance against Israel and the West. Arab leaders dependent on American power just can't match that. And to make matters worse, after the leaks, the subjects of Arab autocrats can hear them sounding like Israeli security hawks, pushing the Americans to attack Iran. Israel's Prime Minister found it hard to disguise his satisfaction. Iran, he said, is the chief danger to world peace. The important thing, he added, is that more countries in the Middle East and across the world recognize this fundamental threat. There's constant speculation that Israel might attack Iran. Israel considers Iran a much bigger threat than the Arabs.
I'm fine, thank you.
Diplomatic advice given to Condoleezza Rice, then US Secretary of State, before this visit to Israel in January 2007, has also been leaked. She was told that if Iran had nuclear weapons, Israelis feared that many would simply leave the country, jeopardizing its long-term survival as a democratic Jewish state. In Iran, President Ahmadinejad's rhetoric has not slackened. It's now clearer than ever that the White House has been lobbied heavily by Arabs as well as Israelis to attack Iran. And 2 successive presidents have chosen not to take the advice of any of them. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News.
Beyond the Middle East, the WikiLeaks cables are also having fallout in Beijing, where, as we've reported, the documents may have revealed the true feelings about North Korea. But you'd be hard-pressed to read any of that in China itself after the internet site was purposefully shut down. The BBC's Damien Grammaticus has this report.
North Korea and China, allies. But is Beijing growing weary of Kim Jong-il? WikiLeaks cables released this week quoted one Chinese official as saying Pyongyang, with its posturing and missile tests, was acting like a spoiled child. Another apparently had said the North now has little value to China as a buffer state. The reality is the cables are, on closer reading, just diplomats' chatter, not a change of policy. So there may have been some awkwardness when North Korean and Chinese officials met in Beijing on Wednesday, but both sides know China continues to back Kim Jong-il's regime, defending it at the UN, propping it up economically.
North Korea's leaders are all paranoid and sensitive. They are always suspicious about China. They will have read the WikiLeaks information, and it will make them more suspicious. But they need China more than ever, so they won't ask China about it. And if they do, China will explain that it's just diplomatic gossip.
More damaging in China's eyes is the cable that claims computer hacking attacks aimed at Google were ordered by the country's communist leaders. There's no proof, but just to suggest such a thing is highly sensitive. As is another cable that talks of China's Premier Wen Jiabao and Chinese firms seeking contracts in North Korea, speculating payments were made to an unidentified recipient to secure his support.
I do not want to comment on the absurd contents of the website. China's position on the relevant issue is consistent, and everybody knows it.
What the release of all this confidential information will do is to complicate America's already tricky relationship with China. In future, Chinese officials and diplomats will be even more cautious about talking to their American counterparts. And while Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, has talked about opening up societies like China, the response here has been more predictable. access to WikiLeaks on the web has been closed down here. Daniel Grammaticus, BBC News, Beijing.
And two more notes from the region today. South Korea's next defense chief threatened the jets would bomb the north if it stages another attack like the one carried out on a South Korean island recently. The government in Seoul has come under criticism that its response to the incident was weak. Now they're vowing to retaliate if provoked again. And it was announced tonight that the US and South Korea have agreed to a far-reaching free trade deal. The two nations had failed to finalize the deal during a visit to Korea by President Obama last month.
This is BBC World News America reporting from Washington. I'm Katty Kay. A wide web of legal trouble after a new arrest warrant is issued for Julian Assange. The founder of WikiLeaks arranges to meet with British police. The legal net is tightening around Julian Assange, the man at the centre of an international cyber drama. For more than a week, Assange and his WikiLeaks website have caused diplomatic chaos by publishing thousands of leaked American cables. But tonight, Mr. Assange's lawyer says he is making arrangements for his client to be interviewed by British police after UK authorities received an arrest warrant for him from Sweden, stemming from allegations of rape. The BBC's Gordon Carrera reports.
Today, the battle between WikiLeaks and the authorities intensified. An extradition warrant for the website's founder, Julian Assange, arrived at Britain's Serious Organised Crime Agency this afternoon. A wanted poster has also been placed on the Interpol website. He's believed to be in Britain and could be arrested by Metropolitan Police at any time.
We are in the process of making arrangements to meet with the police by consent in order to facilitate the taking of that question and answer that's needed.
Assange is wanted for questioning in Sweden, not because of his website, but over sexual assault charges. Charges his supporters say are the result of political pressure and part of a wider campaign against him.
There have been threats to his life. There has been an incitement to commit murder by people in high places, which is outrageous. And under the circumstances, it's quite normal that he will keep a low profile.
Today, there was a reminder about what's worrying the authorities. A new leak, some say the most dangerous. It consists of a list of locations around the world considered critical to US security. In the UK alone, more than a dozen sites around the country are identified. They include a BAE Systems facility in Lancashire, described as critical to the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, and the landing points for a transatlantic communications cable in Cornwall. Abroad, there's also an insulin production plant in Denmark and a Russian gas pipeline junction, considered to be the largest in the world.
You may have your own view as to what will damage the United States, but when you get hold of a document which may reflect the official American view as to what damage to infrastructure in other countries could have a knock-on effect in America, that is very valuable information.
Where previous cables have delivered diplomatic red faces and embarrassment, this one reveals what Washington considers to be its vulnerabilities to terrorism. And the pressure there is growing to find a way to end the leaks.
We have a very serious criminal investigation that's underway, and we're looking at all of the things that we can do to try to stem the flow of this information.
One of Julian Assange's bank accounts in Switzerland was closed today, and the WikiLeaks website came under a cyber attack in Sweden. Both sides may be upping the ante. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
High drama there, and the unmasking of those critical national security sites is just one of the new revelations still coming out of WikiLeaks. In the latest batch of leaked cables, there is new insight into what the West thinks of Russia, and they reveal that NATO is planning to defend Poland and other border states from any possible invasion. Our diplomatic correspondent James Robbins has all the details.
Handshakes between American and Russian leaders are what the public usually see. Relations have recently been reset to stress cooperation, but according to secret US cables revealed by WikiLeaks and released by The Guardian tonight, the United States and its NATO allies agreed earlier this year to expand their defense planning against possible Russian invasion. It was the site of Russian tanks in Georgia during the 2008 invasion which really rattled those NATO countries who'd been part of the Soviet Warsaw Pact until the collapse of communism 20 years ago. And it's the tiny Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia which feel especially vulnerable to Russian pressure. Joining NATO gave them the guarantee of alliance protection, but it's only this year they got a specific plan. One cable from Hillary Clinton in January this year, marked secret, announces, on January the 22nd, NATO allies agreed in the military committee to expand the NATO contingency plan for Poland, Eagle Guardian, to include the defence and reinforcement of the Baltic states. But America's Secretary of State also makes clear the military plans are secret. A public discussion would also likely lead to an unnecessary increase in NATO-Russia tensions. And another US cable reports the delighted reaction of a senior Estonian official. Tisalu welcomed the information and called it an early Christmas present. Now almost a year on, confirmation that NATO has put in place specific military plans to defend the Baltic states is not a complete surprise, but it's certainly embarrassing for the United States on at least two levels. First, it demonstrates America's failure to protect NATO's secrets. Second, it points again to a double policy: grave suspicion of Russia in private, expressions of warm cooperation in public. So this was Hillary Clinton apparently ending quarrels with Russia last year.
We want to reset our relationship.
But now it looks as if suspicion is much more the order of the day. James Robbins, BBC News.
Amazing. Well, among the first WikiLeaks revelations were the desires of Middle Eastern leaders to crack down on Iran's disputed nuclear program. Today in Geneva, international negotiators tried to do just that. For the first time in more than a year, Iranian representatives sat down with 6 major powers, including the US. Just before the talks began, though, Tehran shocked the world by announcing it had taken an important new step in making fissile material. The case of Julian Assange gets more bizarre by the hour. Tonight, the Australian man at the heart of an international security uproar is being held in a British prison on a Swedish charge of rape. Whether there is a link between Mr. Assange's WikiLeaks activities and that arrest warrant is the source of much speculation. What we do know for sure is that he is fighting extradition charges to Sweden, and his site is continuing to release leaked American cables. The plot thickens, and the BBC's Frank Gardner has the latest.